In this video, I'm going to show you everything you need to know regarding the strategies on the tracks in the Shell Cup, the track picking, the item sets, the power items, the bomb spots, and the shock spots. And even though Toad's Turnpike exists, I'll still find a way to show you how to take advantage of whatever situation you're in or which item you have. So you'll be given her full throttle even on one of the most boring tracks in the game. But without further ado, let's start giving her, bud. Just before getting started, if you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing. It's free. It helps me out a lot, and you can always change your minds. Starting things off, we have Moo Moo Meadows. This is a bit of a weird track, as sometimes you can use stars to catch up on lap 3, and other times it can be really hard to catch up. But considering shocks are rather scarce on this track, I think it's safe to say that this is a running track. If you're starting in the front, or you pull a shroom at the first set, there's a good chance you could be given her on this track. In wars, I'd suggest picking this when you have the majority of top spots. Having first is always solid, but having immediate spots behind second is really important for pulling shrooms and claiming immediate front presence going into the second set. In Mogi, I'd suggest picking this behind second. Again, pulling the early shroom can help you push up to the front very quickly, but because this is an inward track, you could pick this even if you're starting in first in Mogi, or just in general. So yeah, while Moo Moo Meadows is a running track, that isn't to say you're stuck in the back if you end up there early on in the race. You only have 2 item sets on this track, which is the main reason why it can be really hard to catch up. The first set is spread out quite a bit, but even so, there are 6 single boxes to start the race. Outside of the widespread, nothing too special here. At the second set, you have 4 single boxes with a double box on the left and the right. This item set could make or break your race, as both double boxes are very appealing, so be careful. It may be in your best interest to secure a single box if you're in a tight pack. The golden strat on this track is basic, but it works. Begin goldening shortly after passing the first set. You'll be able to take both grass cuts, and your golden will run out midway through the second cut, so you'll be given her full throttle. Now, when you only have a star, I wouldn't suggest chaining here and instead use your star at the first off-road cut, but if you have an item like triple shrooms in your pocket, chain your star into the first set and take the 2 grass cuts. This is a pretty solid strat for a short track like this. And you want to activate your bill as you hop into the second grass cut. You're billing through a rather tight section on the track, and considering your bill will drop you off on the final turn, this can be very valuable. You have 2 solid bomb spots on this track, one after each item set. The first one is shortly after entering the short turn section. This is the tightest part of this section, and the only way you'll avoid this bomb is if you hop in the off-road, or if you hit the cow. One way or another, it's a win for the person backing the bomb. The next bomb spot is on the final turn. If your opponents behind you are taking optimal lines, they'll have a pretty tough time avoiding this bomb. Of course, this is a very wide section on the track, but you'll have to go on the right side of this patch of off-road to avoid the bomb. So once again, by backing your bomb here, as long as your opponents aren't too close to you and the bomb reacts normally, it's a win-win. Now, in the rare case that you do end up pulling shock on this track, I'd suggest chaining it into the first set. You'll be able to deny people in front of you from taking the 2 off-road cuts, and by the time you reach the second set, you'll likely be one of the only people with strong items in the front. It's situational, obviously, depending on how far behind you are, but this can help you out quite a bit. But that's all there is to the strategies on Moo Moo Meadows. Let's start giving her on GBA Mario Circuit. GBA Mario Circuit is one of the most common tracks picked online, and it's often picked to reset spots after the opposing team gets at least a solid race. Therefore, this track is a bagging track. It is one of the lighter baggers, but you could have an advantage bagging over running in some scenarios. In wars, I'd suggest picking this track when you have mid to low spots. While this could work for both top and low spots, you have much better options for runners when your team has some top spots in regards to the tracks you can pick. In Mogis, it really doesn't matter what place you're starting in. This track can be all over the place in a Mogi setting, so you should only pick it if you actually want to. But all in all, GBA Mario Circuit. Not the heaviest of bagging tracks, but still a bagging track nonetheless. You have 2 main item sets on this track, but those aren't the only item boxes you can grab. Starting at the first set, you have 5 single boxes before the anti-gravity section, nothing too special here as per usual. At the second set, you have 3 single boxes with 2 double boxes next to the middle box. If you were to take the glider cut, you could still get an item from this set if you want to include these 2 single boxes. The double boxes are very appealing, so if you're in the pack, stay alert. And just before finishing the race, you have a single box before the boost panel. This can be a good item box to bag at, so keep that in mind. The golden strat on this track is one of the best golden strats in the game, if not the best. By beginning to golden in the off-road cut after the anti-gravity section, it'll last until the final straight. You have a ton of off-road you can cut off until then, making this golden strat really valuable. The star strat on this track is also pretty solid. Use your star as you enter the off-road before the second set. It'll also last until the final straight, so this can be very valuable, especially in the good old lap 3 situation. And the bill strat is also really good since there's a bill extension. Activate your bill after hopping into the off-road cut, and it'll last until the turn before the second set. It's pretty sick, and as you could probably tell, these super strong power item spots are a big reason why this track is such a good bagging track. You have 2 solid bomb spots on this track, but one really shines over the other. The first bomb spot is on the turn before the second set. If you back in the middle, there's a good chance you'll land a hit on your opponents. Of course, it's right before the second set, so you'll be able to get another protection or two right quick. And the killer on this track is the bomb spot between the off-road and the second oil slick. Not only is this bomb spot really hard to avoid, but even if you do avoid it, you very likely won't be able to take the ending cut optimally, let alone the ending cut in general. I see people often back their bombs as they hop into the cut, but this one gives you a much better chance at landing a hit, and if people don't have mushrooms, they'll be in a pretty tough spot in the race. Once again, it's best to use your shock at the first set here rather than the second set. I say this because a lot of the power item activations take place in between the 2 item sets, meaning you could deny people in front of you from using the golden or star strat. While people could build up here, you'll definitely have a lot more time to catch up than if you were to chain into the second set, especially if you take the 2 off-road cuts before that set into account. So yeah, in most cases, I'd say chaining your shock into the first set is your best option, but of course, it's situational. Anyway, we're done with GBA Mario Circuit, so let's get her going on Cheep Beach. Cheep Beach is a track I personally really like. I'd say it's a pretty even track regardless of spots. There are no game-changing shortcuts, and it isn't brain-dead easy to front run, so I'd consider this to be a balanced track. Generally, the better team or better players will come out on top here. In Wars, I'd suggest picking this when you have spots behind first. You have an easy drafting section after the glider, which you can take advantage of if you have the immediate spots behind first or even top 2. In Mogies, I'd suggest picking this track in the same scenario if you intend to front run. It is possible to form a breakaway on this track, so front running is a really solid option. At the same time, you can bag a wee bit here and there and catch up efficiently. So overall, Cheep Beach is a balanced track. We're back to normal on this track as there are 3 item sets. Wow! At the first set, there are 5 single boxes before the glider. Nothing too special, and on top of the drafts, pulling shrooms here can help you out too. The second set is pretty wide. You have 4 single boxes, with 2 being on the boost ramp and a double box being on the very left and right. Considering not taking the boost ramp is quite slower, you could lose out on more than usual if you're unable to get a double box if you need one. And at the last set, you have 4 single boxes and a double box next to the very left and right box. Not only are these doubles very appealing because they're doubles, but this section on the track is really tight and thus chaotic. So if you're in the pack, you could be in for a rough finish of the lap or race. The golden strat is nothing too special on this track. Simply begin goldening as soon as the boost from the ramp runs out. It'll run out right before the last set, so while it looks boring, it is pretty solid. The star strat can be really solid given the situation you're in. Chaining your star into the last set will keep you invincible for most of the end game. Most importantly, you're invincible on the tightest section on the track, and the bill strat really shines in a lap 3 situation. Activate your bill as you touch the coin before the last set. It'll last until you're just before the finish line, so you'll have nothing to worry about as long as your bill doesn't run out early. It can be really good when finishing the race. You have 3 bomb spots on this track, with one being pretty overpowered. The first one is right before the second set, and while this is a somewhat wide section, it can also be a bit of a blind spot for your opponents. If you back it right after the turn, there's a good chance they won't see the bomb until it's too late. But if they see it coming, it's easily avoidable. You can also back a bomb right before exiting the water section. This is also a wide section, but the general lines people take here are pretty tight, and you can take advantage of that. I know I'm not used to driving on the far left on this section on the track, so this bomb spot can be decent, but it is easily avoidable. But that's not a problem, as this bomb spot is a beast. Back your bomb shortly after releasing your Ultra Mini Turbo on the second last straight. This is the tightest section on the track, and your opponents have next to no chance of avoiding this bad boy, so take advantage of that. You could gain a huge lead by doing so. While you won't have a lot of time to catch up with this shock spot, it can be incredibly effective if you're close enough to the pack. Chaining your shock into the last set can really help you out. While you're passing everyone in the pack, no one will be able to use items in the tight sections to take you out, so you can take full advantage of the power items you likely have. While it is a big time late game shock, it can really help you out under the right circumstances. But with that, Cheep Beach has been covered. Let's finish strong on Toad's Turnpike. There's no doubt that Toad's Turnpike is a bit of a weird track. I think because there are no item sets on this track, as the items all move along the track together in all sorts of different places. On top of that, there are no shortcuts on this track in any way whatsoever. I don't think this is a full-on running track, as it is possible to catch up with all the possibilities to get to item boxes, but I'll still consider it to be a running track, as if you can run, you can really run, especially on Inward. Inwards go hard on this track. In Wars, it really just depends, but you should aim for some top and middle spots. In most cases, if you pick this track, it's because your team likes this track. However, like I said, Inwards have quite the advantage on this track, so you could pick this when Inwards are in the front, and your team will be given her full throttle. In Mogi, I suppose being in a drafting position in the front would be nice. Just be aware that getting pushed into one of the vehicles on the second turn is a very likely outcome if you try to push to maintain a top spot early on. But yeah, Toad's Turnpike is just a decent running track, nothing too special. Like I said, there are no item sets on this track. You just have item boxes that travel just like you are. You will encounter them a decent amount, as you would on any track. The only item set on this track, if you can even call it that, is on the first anti-gravity section, also containing the only double box on the track. But generally, you'll have your fair share of items in the race. If you're in the back, the item box distribution on this track could be very generous towards you. While power items don't have any significant uses on this track, I'll try to give you some ideas. I use my golden as my ultra mini turbo runs out on the big straight. It's an easy way to spam your golden without having much to worry about, and you could even get a box shortly after your golden runs out. As for the star, the only strat worth mentioning is the one midway through the second last straight. However, this is only useful on lap 3, as it gives you endgame invincibility, which is always reassuring. If you can chain invincibility with other items though, it may be wise to use your star further back. And same goes for the bill if you want the endgame invincibility. On the second big turn, release a super mini turbo early and activate your bill as the boost runs out. Your bill will drop you off on the finish line, so in a lap 3 situation, this can be pretty sick. Well, this track is generally pretty wide, so bombs aren't too effective. Or are they? I mentioned this for one of the bomb spots on Cheep Beach. The general lines people take can be tight, even if they're on wide sections, and you can apply this principle here. If you get the chance, back your bomb in your tight line when it's next to a long vehicle or two. Your opponents will have no easy way of going around it if they're in between the wall and the vehicle. It's super situational, but it can do work. If you have access to an item box or two on the big straight, you should chain your shock here. Using a shock here will give you ample time to catch up, and you can generally drive in your regular line without having to worry about many items. I don't know if there are any significantly better shock spots on this track, as it's pretty hard to find them, but I figured using shock here will give you a huge amount of time to catch up. Just make sure to chain into an item box, and you'll be given her full throttle. But with that, we're done with all of the strategies on the tracks in the Shell Cup. I hope you got something out of this video. If you did, I'd really appreciate it if you'd like the video and subscribe if you haven't already. And as always, stay tuned for next week as we get going on the Banana Cup. We're slowly but surely nailing down every track in this game, so look forward to it. As for this week, I'll be continuing the item series, and with Mario Kart Universal starting this Sunday, I very likely will begin to upload 5 videos a week for the next little while, so look forward to that. But until next time, thank you so much for watching, have yourselves a fantastic day, and keep on giving her, bud.